I need to have some courage, and I need to say this thought aloud. Based on my own thinking, I no longer have a belief that the church is true. Rituals, rites of passage, like a lot of what so many men today are born without and not even knowing that they're missing. I was born into that. And then I walked away. I cast aside my master, who was the Mormon God, but I had honor and I had honesty to help guide me. And this was the beginning of me developing my honor work. And so a ronin, he may have mastery of his craft, but he has lost his honor and he's lost his brotherhood. He has lost his tradition, but he may have his freedom. We have cast off all authority and external control and limitation. We no longer have our honor, and we are suffering greatly for it.
Hi everyone, welcome back to a new episode of the Wayshowers podcast. Just a quick note before we jump into the conversation with Michael Skye here today. Michael is based in Kenya, and we did experience some intermittent issues with our connection while recording this episode. While you may notice these, I trust they will not get in the way of your enjoyment in any significant way. That's all. Enjoy this episode. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to reconnect with you and your work over these last couple of months. You ran this Calling All Men Summit just prior to Christmas, and it made quite a splash in the world of men. But of course, you've shared in retrospect that there were things that you would have done differently and that you would have, shall we say, wanted more of an impact. And so you're a man who wants to enter the world of men with impact after being on a hiatus for how long? 10, 15 years?
From my work as a serious full-time endeavor since early 2010. So about 14 years. Yeah.
Yeah. A 14-year hiatus. And what have you done in that time?
Man, I went on a wild world traveling sabbatical. Part of what I was doing was exploring my own shadow and the shadow of my culture. And shadow has a lot to do with shame. You know, shame tends to prevent us from facing certain things. And there are certain things about myself that, because of things that happened in early 2010, I realized I need to face about myself, and also I need to face about my culture. And my work is, I call it honor work. So shame is, in a sense, the opposite of honor. And so this was a journey into growing in my power and my mastery with my honor work, but not by going deeper into honor itself, but by, in a sense, going into the world that I could not see. You know, so it was right. Also like a wisdom quest in a sense, and an aliveness quest, because shame, you know, the wall of kind of shame had kind of narrowed my self-expression, narrowed the extent to which I was just living a wild, free, grand adventure in life. And yeah, so it's hard to sum up the last 14 years just as that. It by far was not just that. I was also pursuing what made me come alive, period. And I was pursuing my full aliveness. I was on a very kind of radical journey in that way, hunting, stalking my full aliveness, really paying attention to what made me come alive and going there.
Wow.
And and along the way, you know, I had a ton of wild adventures. But now it
sounds like it.
It's been time for me to come back. The whole time I've been gone, I've been envisioning coming back specifically to work with men. And doing the summit was a way to kind of plant myself back on the field, working with men. And but my my purpose, my mission in life is not to be a summit interviewer or such things. So
Mm.
right now, that's in my
And
rearview mirror. Yeah.
so you're already moving on. Yeah. You shared some things about your experiences with running that summit, and I'd love to hear a bit more about that, given that you really got to connect with many of the heavyweights in this field that I've been in for more than a decade myself. What was your experience?
My experience was, I'll say, the part of my experience that was disappointing was
Hmm.
discovering just how maybe undeveloped or maybe developed in a different way a lot of men who are entrepreneurs and coaches working with other men are like it's a very young market, I would say. Um,
Hmm.
we're not developed in the arena of being prepared to do joint venture win-win relationships. I'd had a lot of
Right.
I'd had 2 years of experience, incredible, phenomenal experience, growing and running as a co-founder seven-figure business, and we just shot straight to success using very win-win uh, strategies. And
Hmm.
my assumption, and I knew that the men's space was a bit younger market than the market we were in at that time,
Hmm.
um, but I assumed that we would be more ready to activate these strategies in the men's space, and I was wrong to a good extent. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's one. On the other hand, a very positive and beautiful thing that I discovered is just how many men there are becoming men's coaches, leaders of men, stepping up in their own way, and how different guys or movements are pioneering new men's work, new ways of gathering
Yeah.
men and training men and developing men, and that was very inspiring and very exciting. Yeah, so
Hmm.
those are two of my takeaways.
Right. Well, I sometimes have this feeling that in this particular field, every man who enters it wants to be the king of his own hill, and that there is something that we need to prove in terms of building an empire. And well, if everyone is going to build an empire, then it's a war of resources and attention and
Well, if everyone's going to try to be king of the same hill, that's then that's the case. But
mm,
I think that I do think it is good sense, good business sense to want to conquer and be king of your own hill. But in fact, there are
mm,
many different hills. There's not just one hill. And I think what a lot of guys are trying to do is be king of multiple hills at the same time. You know,
I see.
so I do think that it makes sense to want to kind of carve out and dominate your own niche or your own segment of the market. Um, but inside
Mm,
of that, the more clear we are and defined we are about who our people are and what we are offering that's unique, the more we're actually able to create win-wins with others because we realize, okay, they're not actually competing for the same market and in the same way and doing the same thing. Um,
right.
yeah. So I think the more success that you find as an entrepreneur, the more you kind of realize some of these you realize how much abundance is out there. But the more you are in the beginning stages of your business, yeah, you're just
Mm,
trying to survive. So it does kind of seem like, well, if you win, I lose, you know? Um,
yeah.
and that's
And
partly
that's not
why,
your world at all.
no, and that's partly why I see this as a younger market, in the men's space, because there's so many
Mm,
guys just starting out. And
mm,
seemingly competing for the same, just to stay alive, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, your story is really interesting to me, given that you've had this huge window where you weren't present in the world. And I already told you earlier that I was a participant in one of your trainings at one point. I think it was called Vision Force. And then somewhere in the back of my mind, I think I noticed that you were just completely absent. I didn't see you anywhere. And now you're returning, I would imagine, with a lot of fresh eyes and fresh inspiration, and also potentially with a fresh take on what's going on. And what are you finding are the challenges and the opportunities of having been away for so long and now returning?
Well, marketing through social media is for the most part totally new to me. I'm not used to using Instagram or Facebook or these other mediums to market my work. Back in the day, it was mostly personal connections, word of mouth, and an email list. I started out marketing my transformational leadership work online using things like Google Ads back in 2001. So a long ass time ago, 23 years ago. I mean, that's before some of the guys becoming men's coaches were born, so kind of an old timer in that sense. But, when I first started in the world of transformational work and coaching and working with men as a transformational leader, this was the mid 90s. So even the word coach was not something that had become popularized for like working with men. I mean, now it's just commonplace. But back then, even in the early 2000s, if you'd have told someone you were a coach, they'd be like, what? You're a soccer coach or you're a basketball coach? Like what? I mean, people were not executive coaches. That whole arena was just beginning to take off. The godfather of that movement was Thomas Leonard, and he was an early inspiration for me as far as like business models and this kind of how you can use the internet to work with people as a coach. And he really started popularizing this term coach. But of course, things that we could call coaching go back decades. Landmark education was formerly EST, and this has its roots in like the early 70s. And they had some very radical, transformational, large group awareness trainings that became taboo, but they were powerful. They were very cult-like. Even Landmark Education was accused of being quite cult-like. But I was drawn to cult-like things. I was raised in a religion that was somewhat accused of being a cult. Others, I mean, there's a new term now, what is it? Kind of like high demand religion, religion. Yeah.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
What does that imply?
Yeah, that the religion is really demanding a lot from you in terms of your obedience, your faith, what you're willing to think about and not think about. And
Right.
So, but what I realized, because I mean, for me, it was Mormonism. So I grew up in a very Orthodox Mormon family and household. Even amongst the Orthodox Mormons, my family was quite. I mean, we were all in, man. We were all in. We were born in the last days of the world, to win the battle in the hearts of men before Christ's second coming, and that was to come any day. And we were saving up food for, the final days, and we were righteously doing everything in preparation for the last days of the world. During the Cold War, nuclear war could break out at any time. So later on in the 2000s, when the zombie movies start coming out and things like this, like I feel so at home watching a zombie movie and like an end of world movie because that's the world I grew up in the Cold War and in the Mormon religion that took that faith very seriously. So what I'm getting at is um, a lot of people have like this fear of cults because you don't want someone to take over your mind, obviously. But there's a lot of power there. And one of the insights I had very on in my life after I questioned and left Mormonism was that, and I remember I had this insight with Scientology, um, and that is that they have some very powerful, what I'll call technology. Something
Mm,
happens to people who experience something with a cult that they have never experienced before. But and then what the
mm,
cult has is an explanation for why that they experienced that power that the person experienced it can't explain any other way. Their former worldview does not explain the power that they experienced. And so, because the cult can explain what happened in a way that no one else can, and because the cult has given them this powerful experience the way no one else has, it's just like, okay, this is the truth. Then it makes sense. These people know what's really going on. But when I realized that just because they have a good explanation for it doesn't mean that that's why it actually works, then I became
mm,
fascinated. Like, oh, well, let me go explore cults because I don't need to accept their explanation, but I want to taste their power in a way. So I
mm.
was drawn to things that you know um, even idea systems that were cult like that had great power. And I,
So you went into these places eyes wide open, then knowing what they were. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, just hungry and eager to explore, because I viewed it as a kind of like, yeah, I'm doing recon because I want to use their power for myself, to grow
Yeah.
as a man and to grow in my ability to create, to lead,
Uh huh.
whatever. So yeah, and my work, my transformational work that I would later do, and that started with my work with my younger brothers in the mid '90s. Um, this was based from this kind of hacking of, I guess, cult, uh, you know, ideologies or systems. And one that was very powerful was the cult of Ayn Rand, and you're probably familiar to some extent with Ayn Rand, but
Yes.
especially in those days, there was very much a cult like following that she has, and a lot of people will have like a very hard acceptance or rejection of these cult like figures, and she was one of these figures.
Mm,
Excuse me, but her ideas, not so much her positions, but her mind and her insight into psychology and presenting, like, for example, in her fiction, an ideal man as a man of honor, as a man who stands up and stays true to his vision and
mm,
his values in the face of anything,
mm,
was profound for me.
mm.
And there was another cult like group that arose up and that had all kinds of really cutting edge ideas and thinking, um, that was profound for me in those days as well. And back in the days, it was called neotech. And it also, for people who are exposed to it, you kind of either have one reaction or the other, either like, holy shit, this is like the most cutting edge thing. This is the truth. Or what the fuck is this wacky ass shit? You know what I mean? So, um, and yeah, and then there was an incredible thinker. Like a lot of times, someone who is just a profound thinker and a revolutionary and a genius in a certain field will create this kind of reaction of either like extreme following and loyalty on the one hand, or extreme reaction and provoke kind of a counter response. My screen has gone blank. I think we're having an internet issue here.
Okay, so we had a technical issue here with Michael dropping out because of some Wi-Fi issues. But I think we're back on track. So, Michael, you were in the middle of sharing experiences with the various cult-like organizations that you had entered to learn about yourself and the technology that they had. I think you didn't quite finish your story about Neotech.
Yeah. So, I mean, this was an organization that was inspired a lot by Ayn Rand, but their idea was to take, in a way, objectivism or the power of her ideas to the individual man. If you think about Japanese jiu-jitsu and how BJJ or Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which came to dominate martial arts, was developed by a small, frail man who wanted to take this martial art and make it available so that even the small, weak man could defend himself or even dominate the bigger man. This is kind of what they were attempting to do with Ayn Rand's ideas. And they were also exploring and opening up my curiosity about a whole other ton of ideas. And one of the other thinkers that they exposed me to was a man by the name of Julian Jaynes, who wrote The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. And this was profoundly impactful for my understanding of psychology and, in time, my understanding of honor. And it became foundational for my own work. Not so much his theory about the origin of consciousness, but the way he explained how consciousness functions. And so, him along with, Dr. Eli Goldratt, who was an Israeli physicist who went into the area of business and organizations and developed these logical thinking tools and diagrams. These were some of the foundational thinkers that impacted my work. But yeah, I'm not sure where we were going with this other than, I was just drawn to these kind of radical thinkers and groups that seem to have some greater power of thinking, of leadership, of creating. And this, in large part, was formed by my having grown up in a religion that believed to an extreme extent in the power of the human intellect and the ability of us to grow as gods, like we're created in the image of God. But they actually believe that you can continue growing after death in your intellect and your spiritual power to become a creator of a world, populate that world, and become a god like our God is to us.
That's
This
a
is
Mormon
the
belief
kind of
system.
the meta.
Wow.
Yeah, now a lot of Mormons,
I had no idea,
haven't gone that deep. Yeah, there are a lot of Mormons who are converts today who are not exposed to that theology, but that's the theology that I grew up with. Those are the myths that I grew up with. So having grown up
so
with
does
that,
it mean
that's I'm just saying
does
that's
it mean
why I
on
was
some
so
level, Michael, that
drawn.
each
Go ahead.
I think we may have lag between. Yeah, we have a delay. What I was wondering, does it imply on some level that human beings can become gods?
In that belief system, yes.
Mm-hmm. That seems a very interesting mix of very conservative Christianity and some very new age God is within me kind of principles.
Well, you can see one of the reasons why a lot of Christians say that Mormonism is not Christian, but even though Mormons say that they are Christians. Yeah, it
Right.
is a very interesting, it's a very American religion. It was founded in America. So it is, I think, for me, it turned out to be an incredible foundation to come from. I ended up leaving. I had to decide whether to serve a 2-year mission as a Mormon. And this was a big turning point for me in claiming my honor, was to reject the Mormon mission, which, as I was contemplating it, I was filled with so much shame, and like this cloud of darkness was hanging over me for the period of time that I neglected to go on a mission as a good Mormon boy should. I'd grew up believing all my life. In a way, I'm betraying my father, my ancestors, my heavenly Father, and so this cloud of shame and guilt was hanging over me. But it, yeah, I walked away from the religion, and I had this pivotal experience of reclaiming my honor as I did that. And then what I was left with was kind of this context in my psyche that this life is of ultimate importance, that I have a mission from God to fulfill in this lifetime, that I can grow to become a great creator and spiritual authority, that, life has profound meaning, and that there is right and wrong. There is truth that can be discovered. Families are of ultimate importance. Like these things were embedded in me, but now the content of the religion was gone. The content of the specific beliefs of the religion were gone, but the rest of this had still shaped my worldview and my way of approaching the world, which I found to be extremely powerful, and I came to really appreciate later on in life.
Wild. Yeah, I'm aware of several men in the men's space being former Mormons. Like Garrett White, for instance, he's been sharing about his past as a Mormon. So, yeah. Well, it sounds like there are some powerful principles there that have certainly done their part in shaping who you are as a man today. And you speak a lot about honor. And from what I understand, this is front and center in your vision for what it is that you are to bring in this phase of your work in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and honor
would you share a bit more about that?
Honor is something that if my father were to speak about this human experience, this feeling, this spirit, he would have referred to the Holy Spirit. He would have been talking about the Holy Ghost, And in Mormonism, you grow up learning to pray and tune within to your feelings to know how God is answering your prayers or the message that he's sending you. And so when you are, for example, asking for guidance, and you're overcome by this warmth and this sense of expansion in the chest and this peaceful feeling, then we learn that this is the Holy Spirit speaking to you, or this is, God answering something in the affirmative, right? So, and there's so much attunement to this feeling of the heart. And later, in fact, when I got up the courage one day when I was 20 years old, I had, Mormon boys, good Mormon boys, righteous Mormon boys are supposed to leave on a mission at 19, right? So I've been about a year in denial of honoring this sacred tradition and feeling shame and guilt about it. And I'd spent this year in confusion and self-doubt and shame and guilt because I'd not been willing to directly confront my real thoughts about Mormonism, to have a real conversation with myself and be really honest with myself about what I really thought and felt about the religion. And this was so because inside of that context, you believe that God knows everything that's in your heart and every thought that you have. So there's certain lines of thinking that are really looked down on or that are sinful, that are wrong. And so you can feel fear and guilt and shame about even thinking certain thoughts. And, but one day I got up the courage and I said, you know what? I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write out all of my thoughts and I'm going to see where my thinking takes me. And it took me a lot of courage to do this, but it was profound for me. And I'm just following my own honesty and reason, you know? And it came to a point, and there were two specific issues that I had issues with the doctrine, you know, and I confronted these and I thought about these on paper. You know, when you're writing out your thoughts, you can think a lot more clearly than if you're just in your own head, because in a way, there's more connections you can make, and you can draw like logical connections between a lot more of your thinking. And so the end of the day, the sun has gone down. It's now dark outside. It's now dark in the apartment where I was in Salt Lake City. And I reached a point where it's like, oh my gosh, because I realized something that was like, holy shit, it's true that I no longer believe the Mormon Church is true. I had come to that realization, but I had not even yet like clarified it as a verbal thought in my head, you know? And I didn't want God to be able to hear that thought, you know what I mean? So, but I realized, fuck, man, like I need to have some courage and I need to say this thought aloud, you know, verbally or even out loud. So I went in the kitchen and I'm like, I turn on the lights. So now I have the light shining down on me, right? As if it's God above. I'm standing in the light so God can clearly see me. And now I'm going to speak out loud so God can clearly hear my voice. I'm going to say it out loud. And I get up the nerve and I say it out loud. And I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was something to the effect of, based on my own thinking, I no longer have a belief that the church is true. Something like this. And then the next thought that came to me is like, well, what am I then? Is the Christian church true? Am I Christian? And I was like, holy shit. And I had to confront that. And then based on my same thinking, I came to the same conclusion and I spoke that out loud. And then I was like, do I believe in God? Like, holy shit, And so it was another moment. And I just, based on the same thing, what I basically did was, I'm just saying that I don't know. Based on my thinking, I don't know. I can't say that I have a belief in God. And then I was like trying to imagine, what would the world look like without a God? Because inside of the religion I grew up in, it's God directly making every blade of grass grow. He has a hand in everything, and prayer to him can alter anything in this universe. That was the universe I grew up in. And so I was like full of curiosity at the moment. And I remember looking out the window, trying to imagine a world that didn't operate on the principles that I thought it had, where God is directly making everything happen. And I remember squinting because it was hard for me to look out the window and see. And I realized, well, yeah, it's the light's on. When I try to look out the window, I'm just seeing a reflection of what's in the kitchen. And so I went and turned off the light, and then I could see. And this was like all of a sudden this profound metaphor for me, right? Like I was trying to look out at the world, and all I was seeing is a reflection of what I believed was true from all of my Mormon conditioning, right? But then when I turned off the light, suddenly I could see. So I was like, oh, I want to go outside and look around, So I opened the door and I walked down the stairs and I walked down the street and I'm looking around. I'm like, and I was just stunned by like everything's still, even so beautiful or even more beautiful, and the birds and the stars and the wind and I was just like in this state of wonder. And I got to the end of the street and I just stood there and I noticed that I felt this warm, peaceful, pleasurable feeling in my heart. This was the feeling that my father had told me. If I pray and ask God if the Mormon Church is true, if I feel this feeling, this is God telling me that the church is true. And then it was like, well, how could this be? Because I'm feeling this feeling when I've questioned God like to his face, you know. And what I came to understand
Mm.
is that this feeling is a normal human feeling that we feel when we face what there is to face and we stand up for ourselves, for our people, or our values. And this is a feeling that I came to call honor. And I became very curious and attentive to when am I feeling this feeling? And following this feeling in my life. And this was the beginning of me developing my honor work. So, yeah, so, all of a sudden I lived in a world that was like full of wonder. Like previously, this was a dark world. This was a world of sinful people and dangerous ideas and evil spirits. And as long as I stayed in this beautiful, warm Mormon bubble, I was okay. But all of a sudden now I
Mm.
had this curiosity about this world of darkness, just the world of the unknown that I no longer knew. But I had honor and I had honesty to help guide me. And so, later on, this was about 1991, about 5 years later, after discovering some of these other pivotal authors that actually helped me be able to think more clearly and more honestly and have more power in my own consciousness, like a Stephen Covey and Ayn Rand, Dr. Goldratt, etc. I came upon this neotech kind of these ideas, and their whole thing was
Mm.
about extreme self honesty, like extreme responsibility.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and yeah, that's anyway. Once I found my way with my work, I immediately went to share this with my younger brothers, and I started developing my own ideas and technologies for thinking and leading and being responsible to an extreme extent. So, yeah.
Mm. Nice. I like that story. That's right there with you. It's a formative moment in your life that changes your relationship to God and maybe just cancels it out on some level. And I find myself very curious how you are with God today, though I do want to bookmark that because I I want to know how do you see men and honor today out there at large in the world?
So, have you seen the movie The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've
It's an
written
old,
about it on my last website.
it's a couple decades old. You might have seen it when it came out, but most young guys today will have not seen it when they came out. But this in a lot of ways, I think, is an apt metaphor for how I see men today. Because in the beginning of this movie, here is a man, and it's Tom Cruise. He's playing a white guy. He's not meant to play an
Nathan
actual.
Algren. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not meant to play an actual Japanese samurai. Um, but he is a fighter for the U.S. Military that was dispatched to fight the Native Americans and to get the Native Americans under control. And he has he has money, he has fame, he has mastery of his craft, like he's a master soldier. He's had great victories. on the battlefield. He has the adoration of men and women alike, but he is absolutely tormented, and he is kind of drinking himself to death. So, in a lot of ways today, the drinking could be actual alcohol, or it could be drugs, prescription or otherwise, or it could be our addiction to screens, to work, to whatever is helping us to not have to face ourselves, because there is an internal suffering. There's a lack of honor, and in its place, we have shame. Now, if you ask most men today, do you feel a lot of shame? Some might say yes, but many would say no. And the reason many people don't feel shame is because they successfully have coping mechanisms to avoid feeling their shame. And these are the addictions and distractions largely. So, and if you'd ask the drunk Nathan Aldrin character if he was feeling shame, when he's drunk, no, it's not. Might be feeling pleasure or whatever. So what happens is he is invited to Japan to do a similar thing, which is help get under control and kill off the samurai population, which is the native Japanese warriors of Japan. And you can tell he's conflicted about this morally, and he has flashbacks of committing atrocities on the American battlefield against innocent women and children, and things he saw, that he was a part of that. But his suffering around this is an instinct that he wants to be a man of honor. He has, like every man does, every man yearns to have this, what I would say honor is our natural state. Not shame and not comfort, but honor is a man's natural state that he is called to. He suffers when he doesn't have it, and he is actually called to return to it. So on the battlefield against the samurai, he is taken prisoner, and you can see like he's willing to fight to the absolute death. And the Japanese samurai see this in him, like he has some samurai qualities, and he witnesses this samurai who had betrayed his other samurai and was fighting for the Japanese military. He sees him commit suicide, and he goes through the ritual suicide of the samurai as a way to reclaim his honor, because he's experienced shame on the battlefield, not just because he betrayed the samurai, but because he lost in battle. And this was part of the samurai, the Bushido code. You take your own life if you fail to defend your master, if you fail in battle. And so, like, Tom Cruise's character is he's very curious about the samurai now. And the samurai kidnap him and take them back to their village in the mountains for the winter season. And while there, he watches as everything the samurai do is sacred. Everything is done with this spirit of honor, this warrior spirit. And it transforms him. And he realizes he no longer wants to be a warrior for the emperor and the people who are taking away this way of life from the samurai. He wants to give himself and join this group of people who are living by honor. And he does, and he fights alongside the samurai. So you asked me how I see honor and men in today's world. I think that most of us are suffering for being disconnected from our honor and from a way of honor. And I would say most of us are ronin or sons of ronin. So, and I'm using this term metaphorically, but a ronin was a masterless samurai. Well, there's no such thing as a masterless samurai, really. A masterless samurai should take his own life, right? But a masterless samurai is one who had betrayed the Bushido code and not committed suicide when he failed to obey his master or when he lost in battle. Or even they would take their own life when their master died or was killed. Such was their code of honor. And there became this phenomenon in Japan of masterless samurai that were called ronin. And so a ronin, he may have mastery of his craft. He may be courageous. He may be a warrior in many ways. He may have success. He may have adoration. But he has lost his honor and he's lost his brotherhood. He has lost his tradition. And he can no longer pass it on to his sons. But he may have his freedom. And so Ronin, if you translate Ronin, it means something like cast upon the waves, directionless, purposeless, honorless, peopleless, but you have your freedom. So a lot of us in yearning for freedom and to be free men and to cast, we have cast off all authority and external control and limitation, but we've also we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, and so we no longer have our honor, and we are suffering greatly for it.
Who's your master, Michael?
That's a great question. Now, I would say I'm Ronin as well, but the task of the Ronin is not necessarily to find a master, but he must reclaim his honor. So I would say that, there's a lot of men looking for, in this kind of endless quest, looking for purpose. Where's my purpose? What's my purpose? Purpose, purpose, purpose. And I would say that there's another way of thinking about this, in that it's not so much that he's lost his purpose, he's lost his people. Because a man who grows up connected to his people has purpose, right? A father has purpose. You can't be a father and not have purpose. A son is connected to his people and his parents has purpose. But what we've done in this quest for freedom and to have no master, to have freedom, is we've lost our people as well. We've lost the bonds, and the bond is honor. A man's bond to his people is one of honor. Who is he for his people? And so, a master for a samurai is partly that. He's his people, right? Like, his bond to his master is like, I am for my master. I belong to my master. This is my connection. This is my people. So I don't think that we need a master, but I think we need a people. And yes.
Do you feel like you went Ronin when you left the Mormon Church?
100%. Because I had a way of honor. I was trained in a way of honor. I was, inside of the Mormon Church, men who walked the path are bestowed authority, like spiritual authority, in this progressive chain of authority, the priesthood. And all men in the Mormon Church, by the way, can hold the priesthood. It's different than other Christian religions. And I was born with great bonds of brotherhood, elderhood, fatherhood, tradition, rituals, rites of passage, like a lot of what so many men today are born without and not even knowing that they're missing. I was born into that and then I
Yeah.
left. So in that sense, I'm saying I was born into like a samurai kind of culture. And then I walked away. I cast aside my master, who was the Mormon God, right? And now I was living in shame because I have betrayed my Mormon God in a way and betrayed my brotherhood or my tribe in a way. So what I would say,
Mm-hmm.
Eivind, is that guys today, we're either ronin in that we have walked away from that path, whatever the path was of our tradition and religion and so forth, um, or we are sons of ronin. And if we are sons of ronin, it's even more sad in a way. It's like you never even knew what you were missing. You were never even given
Yeah.
the gifts of the Father to begin with, and then you walked away, and you have that longing for what you're missing. Most guys today, we have this yearning, this longing, but we don't even know what it is. And so it's easier, I think, to fill this void with just anything, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. And that's where the addictions come in. Whether it's porn or booze or drugs or going to the gym or trading crypto or whatever it is, it can be an obsession that covers the wound of not belonging.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the wound
What
of
I'd
not
like
having
to.
anything to devote yourself to, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, belonging
Mm-hmm.
is like, I'm a part of that, but like devotion is like, uh, it's a part of me, like I am committed to it. I'm not just welcome there. I
Yes.
am committed to it.
Typically, it feels to me like belonging comes as a consequence of having a purpose because you actually are in somehow you're in some kind of service to other people, which does mean that you belong. But if I'm only serving myself, then how can I belong? Because I have no value to other people. And so I think they're actually connected, purpose and belonging. And biologically as well, if you were part of a tribe way back 10,000 years ago, a hunter-gatherer tribe somewhere, and you didn't have a role of serving the tribe, you would be out and fast, And so I think there is this encoded feeling that I'm dead in a way. Like there's
Mm.
epigenetically I'm dead because I would have been if I lived 10,000 years ago. And so I think in some sense when I stop having value to others, I go into that dishonorable place where I didn't kill myself. I'm still alive, but I shouldn't be.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. And perhaps even worse is you have betrayed your father, you know, like you have betrayed
mm,
those who gave you life, those whose DNA you carry. You're betraying your ancestors,
mm,
you know? And so, yeah, not only do you not have a role or purpose inside of the tribe that's keeping you alive, in a way, you are rejecting the receiving of the gifts that they would pass on to you. And, in my work, a man who so many men today have rejected their father, including
yeah.
tradition, because the masculine tradition. They've rejected their masculinity in the process. They've rejected men. Many guys today
Mm,
do not have healthy bonds with other men, and
mm,
so they're missing their purpose, which is masculine. They're missing tradition, tribe. They're missing their bond with their father. They're broken in their masculinity. Um, and their sense of authority, masculine authority. And so, fundamental to this is the resentful, self righteous judgment towards our fathers, and this has become popular and commonplace in the modern Western culture, really
Yes.
driven hard by feminism and by angry, resentful, single and divorced mothers. Um, and a lot of us males, we did see ways that our father perhaps harmed, violated, disrespected, didn't provide, wasn't reliable for our mothers, right? And so we made a stand to side with our mothers and to want to protect our mothers and take our mother's side. And that's a natural,
Hmm.
beautiful instinct for a male, for a son, to want to protect his mother. That's a beautiful thing. But to the extent that that stand of honor that we make for our mother turns into a resentful wall of self-righteous judgment against our father, this becomes like a cancer within that has us turning against our own
Hmm.
paternal, masculine instincts, power, authority, calling, etc. And
Yeah.
and furthermore, it makes us untrustable men for the future women and men who will be in our lives, making it more likely that we are going to repeat being a man that our future wives is betrayed by, and then perpetuating this cycle to our sons.
Yeah. Yeah. This theme of the man that has resentment against his father has been very big in my own work as well, because it is a cultural theme. And I think we're far beyond the point of being able to deny that there are very deliberate strategies or indoctrination efforts in the culture to make men and women actually dislike each other. And I think this is an expression of an authoritarian impulse, because if you get men and women to actually be enemies instead of allies, it's it's pretty damn easy to control the populace.
Yeah.
It's pretty damn easy. You can just pit people against each other, and now you don't even have a nuclear family to hold down the stability of the culture.
Yes.
So, I mean, if you are somebody who just are a little bit too hungry for power, and you have a lot of friends in high places who are similarly inclined, maybe it's conspiratorial, but we're way past the point of being able to deny that something like this is happening, in my opinion. So I think there is the evolution of new roles in the culture, but there is also the deliberate attempt of turning people against each other, whether it's political right, political left, men, women, Muslim, Jew, whatever it is, Christians, atheists. It's happening everywhere, and I think honor is one of the antidotes to that.
Amen. Amen.
Because how how can you be honorable and participate in that shit? I don't think
Mm.
it's possible. I
Yeah.
really don't think. But I have a question.
Go
Mm,
ahead.
yeah, you go.
I think
Okay,
that
we have the delay thing happening again.
men,
Oh, okay.
it's up to men to turn this around, you know, and men
Hmm.
can turn this around by reclaiming their honor and passing it on to their sons and being men of honor. So I don't think this is about like raging against feminism or um, on the other side, raging against the patriarchy. you know, this it's this won't be turned around by winning the culture war, because the culture war
No.
functions by casting more shame and judgment and resentment toward the other side. This just perpetuates more of the shame. By engaging in the culture war, all of us lose more honor. But honor is like the white blood cells, it's like your immune system, you know, and resentment is the cancer, you know. Shame, judgment, resentment are the cancer. And so, yeah, there's to me, honor is the force, like in Star Wars. It's this powerful force that activates the human spirit, or that you could say is the human spirit.
Mm.
Yes.
Mm. A lot of men's work is men, and quite often fatherless men, gathering in some building in a rural setting or in some wilderness camp or some kind of environment that feels somehow a bit more primal. And then we are engaging in activities that are supposed to make us connect more with who we are biologically, culturally. Maybe there's some raw challenge to it. Do you feel that this cultural emergence of men gatherings in such ways will have the potential to heal men without simultaneously giving men a way to plug back into their heritage and redeeming their father and becoming a part of their tradition and culture? Can you do only the workshops and the retreats?
Well, I see the workshops and the retreats and the men who are doing it as a very powerful, positive part of the journey. Is it the final solution? No, but like men are just beginning to create these things. This is the beginning of a long journey back to reclaiming our masculine honor, authority, and the roles that we have for our people. So no, just attending some men's events is far from sufficient. But men's work is evolving. It is in different ways going deeper. Men who might have found themselves spinning their wheels in men's work for a decade ago are now pioneering ways to go deeper. You see Paul Robson in Europe now really embracing Orthodox Christianity and bringing that into his men's work. I see you doing a similar thing, and there's whenever you have some kind of inspired kind of movement like this that's really committed, you'll find that it just keeps evolving to make up for its deficits, and it's on its own path of growth. It's men's work is on its own journey, and so I think it's very positive that men are gathering to do this stuff. And if it's just a group of young men who are all the same age doing ice baths and meditating and whatever, there'll come a point when that's insufficient and they'll need to go deeper, and then they'll go deeper, and then they'll start offering something deeper. And so I think it's very positive that it's happening.
Yeah. No. Positive, but in your perception, there needs to be more. There needs to be a deepening that involves, if I understand the fullness of your message, honor and also somehow redeeming the connection you have with your father.
Yeah, and men finding or taking a role of honor for their people, a role of honor where they feel they are inclined to sacrifice for their people, and to do what is necessary. I was thinking of this yesterday, and the phrase came to me like, every man a warrior, every man a patriarch. Like, this is the direction we need to go in. And men are not becoming warriors today. And I'm not so much talking about a warrior in fighting physical battles. I'm talking more about becoming spiritual warriors, like in the sense that I will face anything and everything for my people, and I will stand up where rather than compromise where necessary for my people. Like
Yeah.
this is what I'm talking about
Yeah.
as warrior, every man a warrior, and then every man a patriarch. So or you could say an
Yeah.
elder. Yeah.
One of the concerns that I have for this moment in time and the place of degeneracy we are in terms of our culture is that because we have let go of these masculine principles and virtues, then that they are now going to be resurrected in order to get men ready to fight another war. I see the tendency in the culture now of like, oh, now we like men again because we want to go to war against Russia or something like that. And I've seen things like this happen in the past. And the way that culture can be manipulated in this way, I find it abhorrent. And that it's all like the return of masculine honor should be in service of some uh, artificially imposed ideal from people that you shouldn't trust, rather than that it should come internally from a stand for the family, for the tribe, for whatever purpose you have, and that is the thing that needs to be celebrated, because ultimately I think that is where the healing um, will happen.
Yes, a man
Yeah.
without honor is easy to manipulate. Um, you can see this with
Yes.
the military. You can see this with religion as well. You can see this, there are many women who manipulate their men by this because men inherently, and typically more so than women, have a sense of honor. And because how men deal with other men is by a code of honor implicitly, you know. Um,
Yeah.
if I give my word to you and then I break it and I will not face you and make it right, I'm no longer a man in some sense to you. Like it
Yes.
is foundational for men. It's not quite the same for women. And we could discuss why, but it's not important right now. But a man without honor is very easy to manipulate, and the military does do
Mm.
this in different ways. Yeah, you give a man a battle to fight for some cause or some vulnerable population, and his instinct for honor will kick in. He'll want to be the hero. Men
Yes.
want to be the hero. We have this need for honor. And again, if we have no facility with our own honor, kind of mastery of honor in a way, um, then we are very vulnerable to being manipulated by all sorts of people who can, one, shame us or take away our honor, or
Mm-hmm.
honor
Yeah.
us for something that is serving their own interests.
Yeah. Build statues to our honor when we're dead. Yeah. Where are you with God today, Michael?
That's a great question. I do not have a belief in God, like as
Mm.
an external uh, spiritual being or human shaped being. Um,
Mm.
there's a mentor of mine who basically views reality as God. Um,
Mm.
and not that that's true, but there's something edifying in this perspective, especially in today's world of simply facing reality, which most of us do not do. And he says that
Yes.
our actions are our prayers, you know. So whatever habits you have, you're praying for a certain kind of future, you know. If you
Mm.
are eating gluttonously and not exercising and being lazy, you're praying to die of a diabetic heart attack, for example. Um,
Mm.
you know, I don't have like this kind of mystical belief in a supernatural being. Um,
Mm.
yeah,
Mm.
but I view humanity not as, you know, there's this beautiful line that says, um, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And that sounds very beautiful. But I think it's far more honoring of humanity to say it something like this. Like, we are intelligent, hairless apes doing our best to be spiritual, to be good, you know? And from that perspective, you can actually honor people a lot easier, realizing, yeah, we're born into these bodies of flesh with all these animal instincts. And we're doing our darndest
Mm.
to wake up in the morning and find the right path and be better humans and be more loving and kind and generous and compassionate.
Mm.
And I find that, um, you know, there's ways that, as you know, religious people, spiritual people can easily stand in judgment of the rest of humanity, all while wanting to be good people and compassionate, um, judging people for our
Yes.
humanity, judging people for our animal nature, you know. And I think that the path to a far more beautiful world, the world that's far more what you could say spiritual, is where we operate far more from honor than from judgment.
Mhm. I think the part that I'm tracking with you and honor is that in a way it actually goes all of the way back to what your dad told you about this is God speaking to you. And so it's interesting how honor in a way is now stands in the place of God in your life.
Well,
It
I
is
mean,
what is left of the
the
spiritual
messaging.
education.
That was the messaging from
Yeah.
God in my Mormon religion, right?
Yes.
So, hey,
Uh-huh.
I'm open to that being the case. You know, I'm open to being that case. I'll tell you what, I very much feel that I am fulfilling my Mormon mission in a way to
That's
help win
cool.
the battle in the hearts of men in the last days of the world. These very well could be the last days of the
Mm.
world by how the war, culture war, geopolitical war, how this is all progressing. And I very much have taken it
Mhm.
on as a matter of my honor to fulfill the mission that my parents bestowed upon me in that religious
Mm.
context. Um, it may be that me leaving the religion has allowed me to connect with a lot more people beyond the Mormon religion and still bring them to a Mormon God and a Mormon heaven at some point in the future. I don't know. Like, by going astray, I'm actually serving. I don't know. Who knows? But
Are you
yeah.
are you on good terms with your folks today? Or is this
Yes,
like a wound between you guys?
They both passed away within 4 months of each
Ah,
other
yeah, okay.
at the end of
Mm.
2022. Um,
Ah,
I had
right.
been, yeah, with my mother, who died alone on the coast of Ecuador in her penthouse with her little dog. Um,
Mm.
she died, and for days, no one knew that she was gone. And it
Mm.
was terrible how it all played out. Um, and I was the only one in her life that could live with her that she felt she didn't have her PTSD symptoms from, which I just attribute that to. I honored for her. I held the space of honor for her, so she didn't feel judged by me. And yeah, was there 4 months later with my father, as he passed. Both of them died a kind of gruesome end of days, and very disturbing to me personally. And neither one of them wanted to be cared for by their children in their last days. Such is
Oh, wow.
our modern Western sense of individualism and not wanting to burden each other or burden ourselves, that my dad was left to fend for himself in the wing of the nursing home that was for the crazy people, tormented by those voices that he couldn't understand, crazy voices. And my mom completely isolated. And yeah, they were both very strong warning signs to me, not just about my own future, but about the path that we're on in the modern Western world.
Okay, Michael, I just have a few more questions for you. First, I'm curious what you love about being a man.
What I love about being a man, is, for me, being a man means ultimate leadership and responsibility. Like, that's my responsibility, to be a leader for my people, to be a trusted leader for my people. And so, for me, everything that could be a cause for blame or resentment or backing down or cowardice or compromise is a calling to level up, like that's part of my duty. And I love the leveling up. I love rising to a greater level of responsibility and, power. And I like being counted on and trusted as like the calling I feel to be a hero for my people is, it sent me off on all kinds of crazy adventures in my lifetime. Yes.
Yeah. And now that you're a new dad at your age, there's all kinds of other good reasons to be a hero.
Yes.
We didn't get to touch on that today, but hey, maybe another time. Finally, Michael, if all of the listeners to this podcast were gathered in a room now and you got to give them a message, an advice that they would have perfect implementation of, that would further their life and their mission as a man, what is the advice you would give them?
I would say, your father is a man just like you. He's a human with his frailties and his weaknesses, just like you. He stepped into the role of being a father, and that was a profound gift that gave you life. And you can find a way to honor him as the human being with all of his weaknesses that he is. And as you do that, you can find honor for yourself. And you can realize that the ways that you judge him for falling short are actually your calling to be the man that he wasn't. They're your unique gift. They point at your unique gift to be a great man for your people. And in any kind of normal, healthy human society, no one man is expected to be everything for their children. A child has his uncles around, his grandfathers, other great men who love and care about him. And this kind of nuclear family expectation of the modern Western world for our parents to be everything for us leaves us with a very warped way of looking at the world. And when you stand in resentful judgment of your father, you're now putting yourself above him, looking down on him. this prevents you from receiving the profound sense of calling you can find to be a great man for your people, that can happen when you stand underneath your father and honor him. Again, this does not mean like approving of specific ways that he fell short or wrongdoings or specific actions of his. But there's a way you can come into line with your father and all of your ancestors, and reclaim your honor as a source of your power and authority in a beautiful sense, which inspires both men, women, and also children to trust you and your leadership as a man. So go on that journey to come to know your honor and recover it, reclaim it as your birthright. And if you want my support in doing that, I'm here.
Great, beautiful. So let's end on that note. Where can men find you if they want to do this honor work, this work with getting right with their dads?
I don't have a website. my websites from 15 years ago are not mobile friendly, and they're not up to date. So they could follow me on Facebook, I suppose. That's probably where I'm posting the most these days. I'm returning to my work, so there will be websites. There will be specific places to guide them later. But I do have a program coming up for men who want to reclaim their masculine honor, starting in the second half of March. So, but if you're interested in this kind of conversation that I've had with you, I've had a similar conversation with Hans Komain over the past 5 years, on and off, as we have converged in our international travels. And you can find a lot of those conversations in our Ronin Radio podcast, which, again, it'll come to life at times when we're living in the same city for a few weeks or months, and then it'll go time without that. So you can Google Ronin Radio on YouTube, or my Michael Skye YouTube channel also has my Ronin Radio podcast. It's also on iTunes.
Okay. Yeah, I will provide those links. Great. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you, Michael. And I'm excited that you're returning to the world of transformational science. I don't know if you could call it that, but men's work, and bringing your very, very important focus on honor. Like, as you know, I'm the guy that focuses mainly on commitment. And I do feel like these two energetics or principles are very closely related. So I feel you a brother in this. So thank you.
Amen.
And
likewise.
for all of you, for all of you men listening in today, we have a delay again. For all of you men who have been listening in today, I appreciate that you took the time. And make sure, if you want to have more conversations like this with men who are leaning in, bringing their gifts into a world that desperately needs for us men to stand up and be honorable, committed men, then make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and go to the bell and receive all of the notifications for when new interviews like this will be launched on my channel. Of course, it's also on Spotify and other podcasting platforms. Have a blessed day, brother, and see you next time.